Hi there. My name is Mervin Ratnasingam, and I'd like to welcome you to this brief presentation on respect for human life. While it may seem a universal value to espouse respect for human life, today's cultural and societal norms present significant threats to sustaining a proper understanding of respect for life. Throw in this mix, of course, the emotive and seemingly logical reasons on how human life is best respected, which are largely based on this flawed concept of freedom as something to do as we please based on our individual moral compass. At the end of the day, though, I think these arguments are quite specious and run contrary to the spirit and moral truth of the Catholic faith. With this in mind, I hope this short presentation will be helpful in establishing and clarifying Catholic teaching on the subject. At the outset, I think it's absolutely essential to clearly establish that human life is sacred. It is sacrosanct. It's holy. Why? Because human life is the apex, the climax of God's work of creation. Just look at the account of creation in the book of Genesis. While God spoke creation into being, he took a completely different approach in the creation of man and woman. We read that God wondrously and meticulously formed them into his own image and likeness, and then he breathed his own life into them. Our human life is therefore the culmination and climax of God's work of creation. He gives us his very own life. And thus, we are rightly called to respect and dignify this life because in that way we respect and dignify God, the giver of that life. We read further in Genesis, as a result of original sin, that anger and jealousy clouded the holiness and sacredness that God had placed in us. There is, of course, sadly, the first account of the privation of respect for human life, the termination of life, in fact, when Cain takes his brother Abel's life. We see, however, a clear mandate to respect life enshrined in the fifth commandment: you shall not kill. Although this is commonly understood as the avoidance of the termination of human life, Catholic tradition reveals a much broader perspective. It's a perspective that is about not only avoiding taking a life, but equally to preserve, protect, and promote human life in all stages. And those three P's are important to keep in mind: preserve, protect, and promote human life. Also, we can see then that life is a gift. It's an extraordinary gift that originates from God. And as the supreme gift, we are beholden, we're obligated to nurture, to respect, and dignify this gift. So how do we do this? Ostensibly by living a life in communion with God, being in tune with his Holy Spirit, and nurturing this divine relationship. So life is God's gift to us, and our righteous and dignified living of it is our response, is our offering back to God of his same gift. On this basis, then, we've established that human life is sacred, it's a gift, it originates from God, it embodies the essence and the image of God himself, and hence we're called to offer that life as a good and holy sacrifice. And when we put all of these together, we begin to understand and appreciate the importance of according human life, according to the respect and dignity it deserves through all stages and under all conditions. Thus, any actions or activities that deprive or dilute this sacredness of life are a grave moral evil. Examples of such evils include abortion, euthanasia, and suicide. To prevent life or terminate life by our own choice effectively elevates us to become like God, as we then seek to control and manipulate life and death, something which rightly belongs only to God. As painful and debilitating as sickness and illness can be, it cannot and does not provide any platform with respect to the choice to terminate life. On the contrary, as the church teaches us, illness and suffering provides an opportunity for us to be united with Christ and to offer our pain collectively with His ultimate sacrifice on the cross. There is undoubtedly some curative value in being able to endure illness. A fine example of this was St. John Paul II, who devotedly sought to lead the church as Pope despite the debilitating disease that was racking his body. Similarly, there are various accounts of saints such as Saint Padre Pio and others who readily bore the burdens of their physical pain. So in conclusion, let me reiterate then the fundamental tenets of our belief on the subject of respect for human life. First, human life is sacred. It is sacred because it's the culmination of God's work of creation, and in our lives we espouse His Spirit and reflect His divinity. Therefore, respecting it in all stages and under all conditions is absolutely mandatory because it reflects our respect for God's life Himself. Secondly, the fifth commandment, you shall not kill, while clearly directed towards the avoidance of taking a life, equally mandates the preservation, protection, and promotion, we see the three P's again, of life in all stages. Third, life is a gift from God, a special, wonderful gift that needs to be nurtured and honored, and that is done by living a life in communion with God and our fellow man. And finally, any actions or activities which aim to diminish the dignity of human life so as to result in its termination is a grave moral evil. I hope this summary has been helpful in expounding on Catholic teaching on the subject. Thank you and God bless.